Hi, and welcome to Enabling Office 365 Clients. I'm Jay Seymour, and with me is Martin Kutzer. Martin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Jay. Yes, my name is Martin Kutzer. I'm a content developer at Microsoft Learning, and I'm responsible for Office 365 training products that we develop. And I also do training products for Exchange and Skype for Business. And I'm really happy to be here with you, Jay. But before I joined this team, I was a consultant deploying these very technologies. So I think I have a lot of experience that I can share with our audience.
And I'm Jay Seymour, a content publishing manager at Microsoft Learning, managing the cloud productivity team. And like Martin, I too have a background in consulting and training, and both of us have 20 plus years in the IT industry. So we're excited to be here and talk about how do you actually get these Office 365 clients? What are the clients? What can you do with them? How do we connect? And that's what this whole course is about.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. I hope you will enjoy this course. So I just want to quickly give people a rundown of what we're going to cover. The first module is going to be on enabling client connectivity. And we're also going to talk about the various clients that are available in Office 365. Then the second module, we are going to talk about Office 365 Pro Plus deployments as well. So obviously Office 365 Pro Plus is that big client that you want to deploy. But we also want to mention that this MVA is part of a series that we have on edX on Office 365. And this specific edX course is available on aka.ms/CLD221. So if you want to experience the things that we're going to talk about, read up more details, or if you want to do some labs and take some tests, then I'm going to invite you to just take that URL, aka.ms/CLD221, and that is where you can go into a lot more detail around the very topics that we're going to talk about.
So first up are the clients. So Office 365 clients, what are they? So obviously we think of things like Outlook as a very common client, but all the Office products are really what we're talking about. And as Martin mentioned, Pro Plus is the biggest one. So what is the difference between Pro Plus and that classic Office 2016 Pro that you might be used to? Really, it's how you get it and how it's deployed. The Pro Plus uses Click to Run. We'll talk about how that's installed, and it streams it off of Office 365. Although these days it's hard to find a CD to actually install products. So a lot of things are streamed, but this is updated, and we'll talk about those details. It also includes things like SharePoint Designer, Visio, Project. We're going to talk about things like Office Online and what is that and what are some of the differences. And of course, we also have the non-Windows products such as Office for Mac, iOS devices, and Android. All of those can connect to Office 365, and they are all very full functional products these days. So Pro Plus is the main thing that when we think about Office, that's what certainly those of us at Microsoft think about Office. It is the full client of Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all those applications that you're used to. But in addition, we have online clients and all this other ways to get to Office 365. But Pro Plus in particular stays up to date. So it's a really handy way, especially for smaller companies that don't have a specific software deployment environment, to keep your Office up to date, make sure you get all the patches on Patch Tuesday, make sure the individuals can deploy it. You know it comes from a secure source. You can manage it. And of course, it's up to date and you can use it on multiple devices. So here, 15 devices sounds like a lot, but when you really think about it, it's not that much. It's the classic 5 PCs or Macs that you're used to, plus 5 tablets or 5 smartphones. When you break it down that way, it's not that much different than what we're used to. But it is a great way that you can use Office on all of your devices, and it's licensed through Office 365, and that's how you are enabled to run those services when you need them, where you need them.
Yeah, so Office 365 is really the Pro Plus SKU is the Office that we all know. It is Excel, PowerPoint, Word, Access, Publisher, OneNote, all of those suite of products that we use every day and love is Office Pro Plus. The difference here is it's delivered to you through the click to run mechanism, as Jay mentioned, but also it's a subscription license. So as long as you pay your subscription to Microsoft, and there's multiple ways, you can do it on a monthly basis or on a yearly basis, or if you're a big enterprise through your enterprise agreement, your PC will be authorized to use it. And so when you install it, it streams the bits from the internet to your machine, but it runs like a normal Word or a normal Excel or a normal PowerPoint on your machine. When you run it, you have to activate it. And when you activate it, you actually assign one of those 5 licenses to that machine. And then that machine is configured in the admin interface as one of the 5 licenses. So you can go to another machine, maybe it's your machine at home or it's another machine in your home, and you can then assign another license to that machine. And you can then go on. And then maybe one day you run out of the 5 licenses, but you've already sold your old machine or you threw it away. And then you can go into the admin interface and remove that assigned license from that machine so that you can install it yet again on another machine. So you have those 5 possible desktop versions that you can install on multiple machines and run it that way. And you have the flexibility of deciding where you want to run it. So this is really a different way of looking at the licensing, but the client is the Excel and the Word and the PowerPoint that everybody know and love. So don't think about it as a different type of client. It is still Office 365. From an end user point of view, you would use it as Word. And if you don't know Word, you would go for a Word course. If you don't know Excel, you would go for Excel course. It's not a different Office 365 course.
You don't have to take the Office 365 Word course. Word is Word.
Yes.
But really, I would say the sexy hot topics these days are mobile devices. And mobile clients are come, as we mentioned, with Office 365 as well. So there's mobile apps. They use the ActiveSync. In fact, it's built into Outlook. It used to be a different product, a different thing that you had to install. Now you don't have to worry about that as much. Outlook web app, OneDrive support, and there's even an Office 365 admin mobile app that runs on all of your favorite mobile devices, whether it be an Android device or iOS device, or of course our favorite Windows device. All of these are mobile clients, give you pretty much full functionality for everything you want to do. If you want to make a new Word app from your phone, you can do that. My fat fingers have a difficulty typing out, but it's something that you can do if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, the mobile clients is really a way of you to continue your productivity and your collaboration while you're on the road. So if you're waiting for a meeting, you take out your phone and you can open up Excel or you can open up Word and then continue to author documents in there and Excel spreadsheets in there. It's optimized for touch, so you have the ability to touch things and configure formatting and so on with touch, unlike the desktop client that is really optimized for mouse and keyboard. So this gives you the ability through the capability of OneDrive to save your documents in the cloud, work on it on your PC, and then while you're on the road, maybe you're traveling in a taxi, you can open up that same document on a tablet device or on your phone and continue doing authoring or reading that document. And it gives you the same formatting, the same look and feel that you would see on your desktop. So it is really a rich experience that is available to you. And you install these from the app stores from those different devices. So if you're using iOS device, you will go to the app store to download Word and so on from the App Store. And if you use an Android device, you would go to the Google Play Store to install those devices. So it's part of those stores. And then once you install it, you activate it using your Office 365 username and password so that that client is available on that machine and it's got all the functionality and access to OneDrive that you will need.
But you might be thinking to yourself, I'm too lazy to install things on my phone. I just like to roll straight to the application. You can do that too as well with Office Online. And a lot of times I get to this through if I'm saving a document in OneDrive on my device. that I can use on other devices. A OneDrive allows you, there's a little drop down, you can see Office Online, but you can also go to the Office portal and find all of your Office Online, Word Online, OneNote, PowerPoint, Excel, everything you need to do. Again, it's darn near full functional, all on a client, and really lives up to that vision that Bill Gates set out in the 90s when he said, someday Office will just be online. Well, it's not just online, but it certainly is online and gives you full functionality. In fact, why don't you show the folks what the Office Online looks like?
Yeah, so let's go to a demo of what the Office Online experience is. So Office Online, as we said, is Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, but it's inside the web browser. So you have to be online to experience this functionality. You use your favorite web browser, and I have my favorite web browser, Microsoft Edge here. And you can see when you log on to Office 365, you get these little icons or tiles, as they call them, of shortcuts to applications that you've bought or you have access to. And so one of them is Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, OneNote, and Sway. So all of these are Office Online clients. And you can click on any of these to start a new document or start a new Excel spreadsheet. Another way of creating documents is to go to OneDrive. So this is my OneDrive. I have currently no documents in here. And if I want to, I can go and create a new document. So if I click on New Word Document, it will go and create a new Word document in my OneDrive. And I can now type a document. And you can see that it's a very similar look and feel with the ribbon that you have in Word. And you can say, you know, type any information in there. It allows you to do formatting, select something, make it bold, change colors, and also change fonts. So it is a very similar look and feel. The difference here is that this is saved all the time. I don't have to go and click the save button because it's online. It's saved in the background automatically. And if I return to my my OneDrive, you'll see there that I have a new document now, docx file, and I can go ahead and share this with other people and so on. So that is what is available. And if I want to, I can just click on a document as well and say there's some functionality, and this is really some of the advanced functionality that like reviewing and replying to comments and doing track changes and so on that is available in the Word desktop version. Then you can just click on here and say open this document in Word, and it will then automatically open up Word on your machine and connect to this document so that you will be able to do that very advanced features that's sometimes necessary. But most normal functions like authoring documents is available in Office Online.
And there, in fact, there's some Microsoft Virtual Academy courses where we give you documents, and when you click on those documents, it opens it up in Word Online. So that's something that we use all the time and is available for you when you have an Office 365 subscription. But how do customers get to, what connectivity is needed in order to make this work?
Yeah, so this is the other part of the coin. We showed you some of the clients and talked about what is available, but you want to make sure that the client connectivity is there so that the clients will be able, your users will be able to use these clients in the Office 365 environment. So in order to enable this, you have to configure connectivity to Office 365 so that the users will be able to connect to the services automatically without effort, and they will be able to just use it, and you know, they don't phone you and tell you this is not working today, there's some problem, and you know, you can't go and play golf because you have to sort out end user problems. So
well, that's why I have the admin mobile app.
Oh yeah. So configuring the Office client connectivity is something that you have to plan. So the first thing that you have to keep in mind is firewalls and ports. that is sometimes required in very secure environments. I've been in a few companies where they don't give blanket access to everybody in the organization to internet services. They have restrictions of URLs that people can access. Maybe it's because the workers can get distracted by social media or online shopping, and so they want to prevent them from accessing just any website on the internet. In those cases, you have to ensure that they have access to at least the Office 365 services. So those are usually URL-based services. So we have to publish or make available those URLs on the firewalls and allow people to connect to them.
Right.
You also have to ensure that people have access to the Microsoft Content Delivery Network. So this is caching services that is available that Microsoft owns and other third parties that caches information like icons. So inside of Outlook, there might be an icon for a mail item or icon for a calendar item. Those are reusable image types that we can use for a lot of people because it's the same. It's not specific to their content, and we put those on CDNs so that people can view them very quickly, and they have a sort of rich, fast experience when they use those services.
Because it's local to them. They don't have to come all the way to, if they're from South Africa, they don't have to come all the way to Redmond just to get an icon.
Yeah, and so, but the nature of those content services is that they are cached and they are fluid and they are dynamic. So you cannot give people access based on IP addresses to those CDNs because they are constantly growing or shrinking depending on how those services are needed. So in those cases, you have to do it by URL. So you have to allow people to access the URLs that host those CDNs. And if you don't allow them to access those CDNs, then they're going to see sometimes that there's a missing image inside of their web browser when they access those services. So it's important that you make it available to them. So firewalls is the one part of allowing access. Obviously, you need to ensure that there's no network devices blocking those clients to access the Office 365 services. But you also have to think about your network bandwidth to Office 365. In many countries, network bandwidth can be expensive, and so you have to provision the necessary network bandwidth and plan for the change that's going to happen when you have or when you start using Office 365 services. Maybe previously you access local servers and you access local machines for installing clients, but now you want to access the Office 365 services, and now all of a sudden there's a bigger load on your network to the internet. And so you have to plan for that. And you have to take into account how many client computers do you have that's going to be concurrently using those services. What are they going to do? If they're going to send a lot of emails, if you have people that send and receive a lot of emails, that's going to impact your network utilization as well. Your internet browser experience is also impacted by your bandwidth, obviously. And if somebody is in the middle of a desert, behind a satellite link that's hanging by a string, you know, and there's tin cups making it possible for him to have internet connectivity, they're going to suffer because the services are really far away and there's a lot of hops between them and Office 365. And so you have to plan for that experience as well. So inside of your network, all the branch offices, all of those things is part of your planning, and you have to make sure that that works well and you people have access to those services when they install Office 365 and they want to use the Office 365 services. The next thing that I want to talk about is auto-discover. So once you've planned for bandwidth, your bandwidth is available, you've also allowed for your network access to work, so the URLs, there's no firewalls that's preventing access to Office 365. You want to allow your clients to automatically discover, so hence the word auto-discover, the services in Office 365. And there's really two places where this matters. It's for Outlook, so mail connectivity, as well as Skype for Business. So they both use Auto-Discover to find services in Office 365. In this example, we have Outlook. And usually the thing that the user knows when he connects to Office 365, maybe Outlook is installed on their machine. They know their email address and they know their password.
That's all you need to know.
And that's all they need to know to actually connect to Exchange Online if you as the administrator did configure this properly. And what is the only thing that you need to configure? You need to configure your domain suffix. So when you look at the email address, the suffix, say it's contorso.com, as my example here, you have to create a CNAME record in your DNS that points to autodiscover.outlook.com. That is all you need. So when you use Office 365 and you create that CNAME record, when people run Outlook, they will enter their username, email address, and their password. And then Outlook will take a look at that email address, use the suffix part, append the word auto-discover to that suffix, and then try and resolve that name in DNS. If you configure the CNAME properly in your environment, then that will resolve to autodiscover.outlook.com, which will then point the Outlook client to go and connect to Exchange Online to find services. At this point, Outlook will present their email address and the password to Exchange Online. And if the password is correct, Exchange Online will reply back to the Outlook client and say, here's all the configuration items that you need to know. And it does this in an XML format. So it tells the Outlook client that this is the endpoint that you need to connect to for your mail connectivity. These are the availability services endpoints that you need to connect to. These are your unified messaging, if you have that configured in your environment, endpoints that you need to connect to. And also maybe you have other settings that you want to make the user available, like for example, what is their Outlook on the web URL if they have to access Outlook on the web. So there's a bunch of settings that Exchange Online gives to Outlook in that XML format, and Outlook will then use that XML information, apply it to its own profile settings, and connect to Exchange Online using that username and password, and voila, you would have mail, and you can then basically send and receive mail and do everything that you want to do in Outlook. And all of that was just facilitated with that one CNAME record.
Right, and none of this is anything new. Exchange administrators have been setting up this type of information in the past. They just had to manage everything and make sure all the configuration was set in their environment. Now Office 365 handles that stuff because you just point it, do a CNAME record, kicks to autodiscover.outlook.com, and voila. So what do we need to get this working?
So in order for you to get this working, obviously you want to set this up in DNS. And DNS is important for Office 365 because you want to use your own domain. You don't want to use the domain that comes with Office 365. Maybe some companies do. It's perfectly workable if you want to use the tenant name.onmicrosoft.com name to connect to and use it for email and for all your other services. But most companies want to use their own domain. So they want to use something like contorso.com or company.com and use that as email for their company brand. That is what they used to. They don't want to use another name. So Office 365 allows you to configure other domains that you own, and that's the key word. You need to own it before you can use it. And the way you prove that you own that is to verify domain ownership, because only the company that owns a domain and is able to edit the DNS records in that domain is the owner.
Right.
So the way Office 365 facilitates this is to tell you that you need to create DNS records, and then you verify that you own that DNS name. And once you've done that, then Office 365 trusts you and allows you to use that name. And then you can also create other names in there as well. So this allows you to set up other services and use that for Skype for Business and Exchange and so on. But I have to also again mention that the default name, the onmicrosoft.name, does work, and all the services that is available like AutoDiscover is automatically configured for you. So if you are a really small company and you're happy with that name, say you are ABC Shoes and your tenant name is abcshoes.onmicrosoft.com, then that will just work magically and you don't have to configure anything else. But the moment you want to add a custom domain, then you have to go through this process of the DNS verification.
Right.
So what are the verification settings that are available to you when you want to set up the system? When you add a custom domain in Office 365, you have two options. You can create a TXT record. So that's a specific record type in Office in a DNS system that is just a string of data that you add in Office 365 or in your DNS system. Or you can create the MX record to also specify a name that Microsoft provides, and by specifying that name that Microsoft gives you, they verify that you own this domain, because they say create a record with this name and you will then be able to verify that you own that name. The MX Records is provided as an alternative for some DNS systems that do not support TXT records. So if you have a really old DNS system that only supports the old A record, C name records, and MX records, then you can use a MX record as well. Keep in mind that when you use a MX record, you have to set the priority of that MX record to a really high value, that it's actually not used by other mail systems to send mail to you, because that record is not a valid SMTP host for receiving mail. It's just there to verify that you own that domain. And once you've done the verification, you can actually go and delete these records, because you've verified it, Microsoft has checked that it's verified, and then you can move forward to do that.
But most people would be using a text record these days.
There's some other records that you may want to create as well. So there's a specific text record called the MSOID record. And this is really a record that allows you to point your clients to the right place for authentication. So it's again a CNAME record. And when you do create this record in your local DNS system, then clients will connect to the closest data center for authentication. And they don't have to go to the authentication center in the USA. They can connect to a more local data center for authentication. So this will speed up your authentication a little bit more. But there's many other DNS records that you also may need in your environment, depending on what services are you going to use. So for example, if you want your mail flow to send to Office 365, you need to create an MX record that points to the Office 365 Exchange Online Protection system for receiving emails and also all of the other DNS services. But Microsoft guides you through that whole process.
And we'll take a look at that in just a moment.
Again, to verify that you want to set up this correctly, Microsoft makes it easy for you, and they provide you with a lot of tools to check that it's set up correctly, or to verify that it's set up correctly, or to tell you what you need to fix if it's not set up correctly. And so I have a list of tools here, like the Office 365 Health, Readiness, and Connectivity checks, which is run part of your tenant setup. And it checks that your environment is set up correctly and you have the right connectivity available. There's also the Best Practice Analyzer tool that allows you to check if you implemented the best practices correctly in your environment. And we have the Network Analysis tool. So there's 3 URLs depending on the where you are in the world. You want to connect to those places so that you can verify that you have the right bandwidth and network connectivity to connect to Office 365 services. So these tools will check what is your bandwidth that is available. We also have the Remote Connectivity Analyzer, which is a website that runs in the cloud that you configure with your settings, and this website will then connect to Office 365 and verify that you've set up your Office 365 DNS records correctly, and it's able to resolve those names. And we also have a similar tool that you can run on a client, the Microsoft Connectivity Analyzer. So it's a client that you download to your local machine, and then that client will do also the necessary checks and make sure that it can connect to Office 365. And then finally, we also have the Microsoft Office 365 Support and Recovery Assistant that allows you to run troubleshooting. So if you have issues on a specific machine, you run this Office 365 Support and Recovery Assistant tool on your local machine, and that tool will then ask you questions like, what is your problem? Do it treat you like like a shrink, and it will say, is this problem on this machine, or is it on another machine? And will you, can't you see somebody's free busy information, or somebody doesn't have access to somebody else's calendar? So it takes you through a bunch of scenarios, and then it tries to detect if your local machine is configured properly, and it would suggest some fixes to you. So there's a bunch of tools that are available to people for Office 365 connectivity, and to ensure that it's correct, and also to troubleshoot any issues that you have. But I think let's stop talking about these things and let's look at a demo on how to configure Office 365 services.
Right, so I'm going to show you the basic UI of Office 365. Here's all my applications. I'm going to go down to the admin, which I have open in another tab, and that opens you up to the basic admin screen for Office 365. And we want to configure a domain and show ownership of that domain. So we go down to settings, and there's a domains entry here. And here we can see that I have my onmicrosoft.com domain, which is the default that Martin mentioned. Also, I have another domain that I've been playing with, but I'm going to go ahead and add one just straight from scratch to walk you through the process. So it's very simple. You go add a domain. What domain do I want? Well, if you take the edX course, you'll have an actual domain that will give you, and let me click over to that and get the name of the domain here. So it's a big randomized name.extremelabs.us. That's the domain that I want to add. I go to next, and it says, all right, we need to verify that you own the domain. So we can do text records, we can do MX records, however you want to do it. As I said, most people will use a text record. What I love about Office 365 is I can just copy the text that I need straight to the clipboard on a Windows device. So I just click that, boom, I have that information. I go back to my admin center, I go to my DNS settings, and this is actually creating a record. So this is the interface for my DNS provider. And I say, create a record. I need to create a text record. And I enter that value. Now the domain name, because we're actually using the domain avkq4dy, we don't want a subdomain or a host name underneath that. I'll just use the @ symbol, which represents that host domain. So that's where it's going to go. And when Office 365 goes to look up that information, it'll find that text record, and I'll create it. And we see that it creates the text record. I verify that it has a record, go back to my admin center, and I say verify. And Office 365 will go out and look for that text record. It finds it and says, great, I see that you own that domain. You prove that you own that domain by being able to add an entry. What else do you want to do? What other settings? And here's all the MX records, CNAME records, service records, everything you want to do. Office 365 will walk you through how to do all of that. And we'll go back and take a look at some of these a little later, but this gives me an option to configure everything I want to do. Right now, I'm just going to skip that step and finish, and I've added a domain. and it shows up in my domain list. If when I want to go back to configure that other stuff, I just click on my domain. Again, it shows me exactly what I want, and I can copy that stuff straight into my DNS service provider. And Office 365 really goes a long way to help you to do all of this stuff because it's super important. And if you have a provider from GoDaddy or Network Solutions, or there's a ton of other providers, there's even little drop downs that link to their help so you can figure out exactly how to configure the domains in whatever provider you have. And a lot of providers, it's probably not all the providers in the world, but it's a great start.
Yeah, so it's really easy to configure a domain and set that up, and Office 365 holds your hand all along the way. So the final topic in this module is on modern authentication. So authentication is really part of a bigger discussion when we talk about identities and so on. And there's many other courses out there that you should look at on Microsoft Virtual Academy on identities. But I just want to also highlight that modern authentication is available for Office 365 clients. So if you're using Outlook and you want to connect to Office 365 and you want to use modern authentication, it is available in Outlook. But what does this mean? This is really a way of making sure that you have something like MFA, multi-factor authentication, which is a much stronger authentication mechanism for your clients. So people that want to have a really secure email environment, and they want to make sure that people know the right password, but they also have a device like a phone, so it's something you know and something you own or something you have. Both of those two, only if you have both of them, you have access to the service. You can use Office 365 modern authentication to verify that users are authorized to have the service. So this allows you to then set up Outlook. People will enter their username and their password, and it will then say, oh, I need to verify another factor. So there's a client that runs on iOS, Android, Windows Phone devices, and when it sees that this is configured, it will go and connect to that client on that device, and you have to enter a PIN or verify with a fingerprint or something like that and allow access to that phone. It's important that the users have to set up that functionality on their phones before they can access this feature, because if they didn't set up this feature, then they have to do it at that point. So
Right.
it makes it an easier experience to tell users that you have to set up your modern authentication on your devices beforehand. And then you can set up other things like conditional access. Maybe you want to allow people to access Office 365 services only when they're in the office. But when they're connecting from the home and it detects that the IP address that is connecting to Office 365 is not a work IP address, then it doesn't allow you to connect. So you can do really, really strong security measures in your environment.
And what's nice is that this is really easy to set up in Office 365. If you're a small mom and pop shop and you want the big boy authentication, which is what Microsoft uses, although if we have phone authorization and everything, you can set that up with just a few clicks of the buttons. In Office 365, it'll use a cloud identity through Azure and walk you through setting it up. A few clicks, you can enable it for your users. And then when Susie goes to log in, it'll prompt her to configure her phone and give her a little QR code to log in, get the app, all that sort of stuff. It walks you through it, which allows, one of the beauties of Office 365 is it gives small to medium-sized companies capabilities that previously only large companies had. And so it's a great environment for you to really make sure that everything is secure.
Great. So that brings us to the end of Module 1 on enabling client connectivity to Office 365. I hope that you will stay tuned for the next module on managing Office 365 Pro Plus deployments. And again, I want to remind you of that URL, aka.ms/CLD221. That's the edX course where you can take this full course with all the labs and all the details and learn a lot more about Office 365 clients. And stay tuned for the next module.